Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in day to about Märchen Crown, chapter number 20. This chapter is titled Cinderella, and let me tell you first off, sorry this video is coming out after the initial Wednesday release date of this chapter. We're about 5 days out from that initial release date. It's recording of this video. Life got busy, sort of is what it is there. But besides for that, I want to talk about something that's a little infuriating, and that is the website of Manga Plus, where I read the series and, of course, get ready to do my reviews off of because of, like, hey, it's on the website, where else am I going to read it off of? Manga Plus is a terrible website. I have literally sat here at my computer reloading the Märchen Crown page for about 40 minutes. You may be like, wow, that's got to be like an overstatement. No, I have been watching a Hollow Knight speedrun video for the past 37 minutes, and I started this video like 5 minutes after I've been trying to get this Märchen Crown chapter to load, and finally I have it all loaded. So let's talk about this chapter right here, right now. Manga Plus, you're a website. Thank you for providing me with all of this great manga to read, but also, why do you never want to work, right? Well, anyway, getting into the whole idea of what you all showed up here for today, which was Märchen Crown chapter number 20. This is honestly one of the most interesting chapters I have probably ever read of a manga in my life, mainly for the way that the paneling of this chapter is laid out in the form of a storybook, right? All things considered, this storybook looking aspect really makes sense, being like, hey, fairy tales are a big part of this series, or like twisting the fairy tales, or really just focusing on the way the initial like grim fairy tales try to like describe all of these actions pretty much, and just the way we see it here in this channel all laid out from Bellina's view, and like, hey, here's the picture book of what Cinderella's life consisted of. And of course, how we see this is not particularly accurate by the end of the chapter. It's just honestly a really cool way to show us a manga chapter, and it's just really cool, you know what I'm saying? So, like, let's just go ahead and sit down and talk about this great chapter of Märchen Crown. But before we can do that, we first need to talk about what happened last time in Märchen Crown. And very succinctly put, it was a chapter all about sort of like Bellina after, like, hey, Michael went through and completely took down King Ela. And here we're sort of looking at the aftermath of this battle of like, hey, here's what Lefina's doing, here's how Rapunzel's looking, here's how like all of these other characters are reacting to all of these things here in the moment. And Bellina really went on this big thing as we sort of got the big reveal of like, oh man, look at that. Bellina actually looks very similar to Rapunzel. And also we learned about something that Bellina has that was called like the Cursed Eye or something like that. Or no, it was called the Curse of Torment. And we get that explained a little bit more in this chapter right here. But really that's most what happened last time, which is like the big reveal of like, hey, all of these princesses seem to look the same. And here is now Bellina's story, right? But we start off this chapter of Märchen Crown with the cover page of the book of Cinderella, pretty much, right? As we just see that there's this big manor, and in front of it sits a young Bellina, as we get some narration. Or really not narration, but more just like the book's page words being read to us pretty much, right? As it just says, once upon a time, in a splendid manor, there lived a beautiful young maiden. The girl, named Bellina, spent all of her days alone inside the vast, empty mansion. Bellina's mother passed away when she was very young, and her father was always off searching for love, leaving poor little Bellina to her lonesome. However, one day Bellina got a brand new family. Her father would say, "I'm sorry for leaving you alone, now we can all be a happy family," welcoming a seamstress and her 2 daughters into their new home. Bellina was delighted to see her family grow, but little did she know, her father was never again to return. And what's more, her stepmother and stepsisters will begin to bully her and treat her as a servant, working her hard to the bone. Their bullying was cruel and relentless, and one day, the eldest stepsister had given Bellina a dress. She was overjoyed, only to find the same dress cut into tatters the very next day. The second eldest stepsister offered her some cake. However, when Bellina wasn't looking, she slipped in a concoction to her tea that painfully burned her throat. Her stepmother would watch for some time as Bellina frolicked innocently in the garden, until one day out of the blue, she grabbed her and chopped off her left leg, with an axe. Bellina cried out in pain, but her mother only shook her head. "It's because I love you. I love you so much," she would repeat over and over. These were a few of the many ways they continued to hurt and torture poor Bellina. And that was about the time when Bellina met the prince. Fearing her home, Bellina had left to seek solace in the town, but as if by divine intervention, she found herself drawn to a young man in the center of a crowd. The prince bore no hatred inside of his heart, not even for those who would belittle him. He was kind to all, and the townspeople had really come to love him. Bellina fell completely in love with him and returned home to the mansion with a newfound sense of hope. Although her stepmother and stepsister's bullying remained incessant, Bellina never wavered. Just like the prince, she treated them with only the utmost kindness. And oftentimes, she would give them flowers and sing for them with all of her heart. That's how precious to her new family really was. But the more Bellina expressed her love, the darker their expressions grew, and they pulled away from her. Bellina's brave and innocent voice would be heard from the mansion by day, followed by her stepmother and her stepsister's sobs by night. Then came her stepmother's birthday. That day, the family all went out for a picnic. The four parked their carriage at a barn on the outskirts of town and began their picnic. Bellina fell asleep during the picnic, and when she awoke, it was already dark outside. "It's time to go home," said her second eldest sister. In a panic, Bellina reached into her pocket and withdrew a beautiful necklace. She presented it to her mother, saying, "Happy birthday, Mother." It was the precious keepsake from her late birth mother. "I want you to become my real mother. Let's be a real family," said Bellina, heartfully expressing her deepest wish. Her stepmother accepted the gift. "Oh, thank you, Bellina. I love you." And with that, they tied Bellina up in the barn and set it ablaze. They were so enthralled, they failed to notice the flames beginning to cling to their own clothing. Her stepbrother and stepsisters passionately set fire to the barn, as if possessed. The three of them were instantly enveloped into flames. Even as their final screams rang out, they seemed to be shrieking Bellina's name. Bellina, dizzy with terror and sadness, managed to break free of her binds and crawl out of the barn. But there, her second eldest sister was waiting. She wrapped her fingers around Bellina's neck, squeezing harder, bit by bit, and said, "I want to see you suffer. Show me the look on your face as you endure this unbearable pain." As now in the chapter, all of a sudden a voice just cries out like, "No, no, no, this is all wrong." As we're going to get the whole explanation here in a second of like, okay, this is what Lefina is saying about this story of like, no, this is wrong. This is not how all of these various things happened. But before I do that, let me go back and talk about the previous 13 pages of this chapter, because like there is a lot to unpack here. And being that it's like a storybook, it's meant to be like all read in one continuous thing. And like, that's what I just did right there, you know? But there is a lot of like very interesting panels we get here of like, hey, we see that Bellina's father's this like guy with this like big mustache and like little goatee pretty much. And he just like brings this stepmother and of course these two daughters in. As we will pretty much see, the stepmother has a hairstyle very similar to Lefina, that same sort of like auburn color, but like just a little bit longer, as we understand that Lefina is the second youngest stepsister, one that did not die in the fire that we hear about at the very end of this storybook, right? And I really like the design of the second oldest stepsister as well, or the oldest stepsister. She sort of has like this black, almost angled bob pretty much. It really reminds me of the character Cone from World Trigger. I know, totally the reference that everybody who watches this video is going to get, but like, it's just like the other character I know who has this same type of hairstyle, and now that I see it, I'm like, let me point that out, you know what I'm saying? But of course, there's like a lot of very interesting things about like the torture that these sisters put Bellina through is like, hey, they gave her a dress, cut it all apart the next day, right? Oh, they wanted to give her tea. Oh man, it scalded her throat. Oh, look at that. She was out in the garden and she got her left leg cut off because of it. Like, oh my gosh, that's a little weird, right? And eventually we get this very striking image of Bellina just walking through a town, of course, having to use a crutch because, like, hey, she doesn't have her left leg anymore. And as she walks around, she goes and she runs into King Ela, and she just really gets entranced by him. Like, hey, because I see him, I want to affect and show everybody just how much I love them, pretty much. And even to the people who bullied her, it goes through and affects them this way, right? As we even get that narration of like, hey, during the day, Bellina would sing, and at night, all of the stepmom and the stepsisters would just cry. And we will get the recontextualization, that's the word I was trying to say, of what all this means at the end of the chapter. But still just like going through it, oh man, she fell asleep, and oh, there's a barn over here. Oh, they set Cinderella ablaze inside of it. That's not very nice, right? And of course, then the whole idea of ending this out, and Lefina, the second youngest daughter, just going through and choking out Bellina here in the moment, right? But going back to the chapter at large, the whole idea of like, no, Bellina, or not Bellina, Lefina's like, no, this is all wrong. This isn't true. I never wanted this. The truth is, I actually wanted to... The truth is... I never wanted to think such things, so why do I keep thinking all of them? As we just see, this is a moment whenever Lefina is, like, choking out Bellina. Like, this is a scene that actually happened, but the entire time, Lefina, like, tears are just coming down out of her eyes. As Lefina just thinks, like, hey, my bigger sis only ever wanted to share her clothes with you. All I ever wanted was for you and I to enjoy some cake together. And Mother loved you even more than she did us. And yet, as you just get a little bit more narration just saying that Bellina's stepmother and her two sisters had actually loved her so very dearly. They wanted nothing more than for poor Bellina, who had been abandoned by her own father, to be a part of their loving family. But the more they loved Bellina, the more their kind hearts were corroded by the curse, until they had been completely destroyed. As here in the moment, we just see all of the vines rushing through this facade, pretty much, as Lefina is just choking Bellina, singing like, run away, Bellina, please, you have to. As the narration just finishes, the curse of torment, that was the ailment which Bellina had been born with. And that's where we end this chapter of Märchen Crown. Now, going back to this reconsultation here, or this recontextualization, why can I not say that word, right? Either way, this whole idea of flipping the script here of like, man, all of these people actually really loved Bellina, and they loved her so much, and like, hey, the older sister gave her the dress out of love, but whenever Bellina showed love in return, the curse corroded at her heart and sort of made her go through and cut the dress all up here in the moment. Lefina just wanted to share all of this cooked pastries and goods with her, but the curse made her want to harm Bellina in the same way. Same thing with the leg being cut off. What is a better way to show you appreciate somebody's hobbies of looking outside in a garden than cutting their leg off, pretty much? Of course, is the whole idea of, like, the glass slipper, trimming off the foot to slit it inside there. At least that's what I think the original, like, Grimm fairy tale Cinderella story is. I'm really not too sure. I'm not really a fairy tale guy, as it sort of is, right? But either way, just going through all this and, like, seeing the whole idea of, like, hey, Bellina would sing in a day showing her love, and all of the sisters and the stepmother all realize this, so they have to push themselves away and cry at night because they can't properly show Bellina how they feel. And eventually going into all of these ideas of whenever they were at their most loved, pretty much, right? Whenever Bellina's like, hey, become part of our family, they sort of went berserk due to the curse and set her on fire, killing not only themselves, leaving Lefina to have to deal with Bellina here in the moment, and a curse that corrodes all of this nature. It really works out very well, and I like how we get more exposition on this whole idea of the Curse of Torment that we got last chapter. It really works very well to be like, hey, here's the ideas of it, and here's the curse in action, pretty much. I'm guessing next chapter will be a little bit of a continuation on the Bellina flashback. I say flashback in like quotation marks, being like, this is her like backstory story, pretty much, like storybook whole idea. So I don't really know, but I expect to be like, hey, here's how she finally like truly found King Ela, learned that he was cursed, and was able to make a life with him, pretty much. Even if we do know that from what we've seen of this series, Ela does not always feel the strongest about Bellina, because at a certain point, he couldn't even remember her face, as of course we learned a few chapters ago. But either way, as much as I'm like, man, this Märchen Crown series is something else, I just really love the aesthetic of the picture book here in the moment, and just moving into the whole idea of like, this is a twisted fairy tale due to the curse. I really like how it's getting presented here, and I can't wait to see more next time, right? And yeah, with all that out of the way, I will catch you guys next time for the next chapter of Märchen Crown, chapter number 21. This chapter will be coming out in 2 weeks on October 8th of 2025. So yeah, that's pretty neat right there. It's in our 2-week break, but hey, Asa Asa Casa, Agio Cora, and Asia Chica, take your breaks if you need them, right? But with all that out of the way, I will catch you guys next time for the next chapter. Again, this was chapter number 20, titled, what was this chapter again? Oh, it's titled Cinderella. How could I forget being like, that was the whole idea of this chapter. Really, this chapter should have been titled Bellina, and then like next chapter with more storybook should have been titled Cinderella, because like, she's not Cinderella yet. Right now, she's just Bellina, but whatever, right? But yeah, good chapter. I've talked about Märchen Crown. I've literally talked about every single chapter of this series that's been published in any sort of magazine so far, which is, wow, all 20 chapters of this manga. There will be a playlist in the description box of this video along with the end card of the video where that playlist can be found. If you did enjoy this video, I cover plenty of other anime and manga related content here on my YouTube channel, so just go check out at Glowplasma. And yeah, follow that out of the way. I'll catch you guys next time for Märchen Crown, chapter number 21. Again, this was chapter number 20, titled Cinderella. And yeah, I will catch you guys then. Good chapter. I enjoyed it. This will be Glowplasma signing out.